have the show. I won't take a ton of time because we have 5 artists, and as someone here pointed out, it could go on for 4 hours. But we won't, we'll stick to our time frame. I'm Jennifer Armetta, I'm the owner and director of Engage Projects. James Schenk is over there, right-hand man. So we came up with the show because we were thinking about artists and what artists need, and I think what a lot of artists do need is time in the studio or access to a studio that people can come and see how their work is evolving and what their process is. So that was the evolution of the concept of this show. So we wanted to be able to bring artists together that you might not necessarily put together, and think about how their work evolves. And so that's how we came together. And I will introduce each one of you. I worked with Noel Mercado. He was in another show that we had at Engage a couple of years ago, 3 years ago. bARBER. I met bARBER actually when we were at CAC, and wonderful artists come out of that program. We really connected, and I connected to his work. Girson, wonderful. You've been around for a long time, and I really been wanting to work with you, so I'm so glad that this really came together.
Long time.
Yes, long, too long. And Nick Albertson, we worked together. He came up from Aspect Ratio Projects, which is what a gallery initiated as and then worked into Engage Projects. And Margaret Welsh, who is wonderful, and we've done multiple shows together and we've done Engage for 6 years? 6 years, I think now. Let's do it.
Okay.
Time flies.
Yeah.
So anyways, I don't want to be the one talking this whole time. My goal for each of the artists and for this whole program is to have you get to know the artist personally, get to know their work and their practice, and how these beautiful pieces like come into the world is basically it. So feel free to ask questions if need be. You guys can talk to each other. It doesn't need to be me dictating everything. But we will have time at the end for questions. And then, of course, at the very end, we'll have time to walk around with the artists and view the work and discuss it personally. So, with that, I will start with you, because you're right here. Maybe if you can give Taylor a little bit as we go kind of down the line, but maybe like what inspired you, what caused you to become an artist, and why do you work the way that you do? Because you work in multiple mediums. These chairs are up front, the Marlboro chairs. Noel's work is also over here, and he has a work in progress on a pedestal back there. So maybe give us just a little brief overview, if you would.
Yeah, so I think a lot of my practice is rooted in scarcity and rare, like making things that feel like they could be made. But I think like when I was making those chairs, that was more of me making stuff that I wanted to kind of blend in. It seemed like when did Marlboro make chairs, and then we're kind of on Herman Miller basis. But as I kind of evolved from morphing from that to it's like these gridded works that I'm making, it was more about this element of cropping and capturing moments of things that I appreciate. So you kind of see it in the chairs and then through the gridded works of like these intentional cuts and framing it in very specific intentional ways. So why do I make what I make?
Yeah. What inspires you?
What inspires me? Material, honestly, like really just like my material and my process, tools, just the capability of being able to learn how to use a sewing machine, use woodworking tools, and like really use those to my advantage and kind of be as creative as you. But yeah, so that's kind of like my practice. I love just like experimenting, cutting things up, like transforming them, making them into something that they were never meant to be, and then that also allows the viewer to further examine anything that I make. Just because, especially in the grid works, when you stand back, you don't really see grids and squares and things and faces, and then once you get closer, you start to see what these pieces like actually came from and how they relate like directly into my work, like the type of canvas, the fabrics, the leathers, the painting techniques, all stem from this like utilitarian, just belt making or wallet making, make wallet chains, and that was like something that I held on to. I stopped making wallets just because I like making this stuff at more. But yeah, just like a little bit of insight to my background.
Yeah.
What I like to make.
Well, surprise and discovery are two words that kind of come to mind in terms of like translating that to this, you know, when you say you're taking some sort of basic things and then morphing it into something else, and I think that resonates at least with me when I'm looking at that.
And that's my goal. Like I want you to stand, like I want, from far away I want you to feel like, what is that? And like it makes you want to get closer and figure it out. And then have moments of discovery and like what, I don't paint, I've never been able to paint. I don't have the patience to let paint dry. And that's why I like using fabrics. So these are kind of like my ways of like abstract painting where I'm just like cutting things up, putting them together. This one specifically, I was just reaching in the bin and pulling it out, and whatever came out, I was going to sell it next. And like, however pattern and order I pulled it out in. So when I stood back, I was seeing something new. Like I didn't know what I was going to see, as opposed to some other pieces I make where I like map them out a lot more. But this is more fun because I actually finally got to experience like what an abstract painter feels like when they step back and I'm like, okay, like I can kind of see what's happening here. There's a nice moment here, and I'm happy or I'm not happy with it. So that's kind of like where this stems from.
Barber, discovery, that's actually a good word for you to start.
Yeah. What were the questions again?
Yeah, I'll repeat that because this is like just a little bit about what inspires you, how you go about making, and sort of what the concepts are behind it.
Okay. Well, what inspires me the most are people. I feel like everyone has a story to tell, and it's my job when I look at a person to make it my job to discern their personality and see if I can articulate who they are through my voice. So if I just take this room now, people are making lines, people are taking up space. You can tell relationship due to proximity. There's elbows touching, there's some part, so like all that information is there. And so it's that type of thing that inspires a piece. Why do we hold ourselves the way we hold ourselves? And can I articulate that emotion or a personality without the representation of a nose or an eye, of eyebrows? Can I do that through color and texture? So those are the things that inspire me. My work, I started, I guess for me, and I'm gonna piggyback off Noel here. I think the crux of it all is self-definition. Growing up Black American, a lot of context was put on my body without my permission. And so, and a lot of that, the result of that is I'm not given the benefit of the doubt. So it's always been my angle to, see if I can get the viewer to exercise a different criteria of judgment. And if I can give them new definitions and so, and do it in such a beautiful way with color and texture, will they then take the time to personify the stick figure? Will they then take that time to find a new definition, find a new criteria with the work? So it's kind of like I'm pushing us to practice our second brain and not our first initial reaction to a person, to a dog, to whatever. So that's that. What inspires me?
What inspires you? And like maybe why collage?
Why collage? Oh, great, yeah. So collage. I started working in collage for a number of reasons. Mainly, I was thinking about what is the visual component to hip hop. What is the visual component to soul food? Black culture, there's a lot of ingenuity that takes place. And what happens is, okay, soul food, for instance, the enslaved were given scraps. You know, they weren't given the good things. But what they did, they took what they had and they made something. They made a cuisine from it. Hip hop. They couldn't afford the instruments, so they sampled, right? So I was thinking about that thread line through the culture, which is an American story. You know, what is the visual component to those things? And for me, it's collage. You know, taking something that's pre-made and then applying a new context to it, or using it for something else. So just trying to have a conversation with some of the greatest exports of my culture is what inspires me to continue with playing with collage that way.
Yeah. Awesome. I'm not Nick. You're in the hot seat.
Thoughts of inspiration?
Yeah. Because your work is, I mean, I think you come at, I don't want to put this on you, but you come at things a little bit differently maybe than Noel and bARBER.
My work over the years has been different ways to use paint to explore things in different ways. So some of the work looks nothing like this. I've done all different types of things, but there's a flexibility and range that paint offers that is just so curious to me. And I guess that, I think curiosity and inspiration are best when they go hand in hand. And it's through the paint and finding different ways to use it in different expressive means. Like other things I've done over the years, obviously the palette of these is very subdued. I like to say that I'm a very generous painter, but I'm slow to give. And I hope that, you know, my work doesn't wave its arms and jump up and down and say, hey, look at me. My work sort of whispers. And I like that. I mean, that's something that I really want to cultivate, and the viewers that take the time to find it and invest in it. I think there's things to see there, and maybe, you know, on a good day, maybe we'll share that inspiration. So,
Yeah. Well, one last thing. Also, like you're talking about the paint. I know. I'll let you.
Nick really wants to
answer.
answer.
And then Nick's gonna hurl it. You mentioned the paint, but it's also the materials under the paint, because there's different materials here, right? You have the Yupo paper, right?
Right.
And canvas, and so that makes the paint behave differently.
That's absolutely right. So of my 5 paintings here, the 2 larger ones are on canvas, traditional old school techniques. All of these are observational, straight up still life painting. The 3 smaller paintings are on Yupo, which is this Japanese paper product. It's amazing. It takes ink, it takes oil paint, it takes graphite, it takes charcoal, it takes everything really well. But one of the nice things for me in Yupo is that it doesn't absorb the paint. It doesn't absorb the oil. It's apparently it's archival, is what I've been told. And, but what happens with oil on canvas is that the canvas literally and the substrate literally absorbs some of the oil, and it pulls the paint back into the surface. On Yupo, it just sits on the surface and it just stays there, and so it maintains more of a material presence. And it maintains a sort of a real sense of the flatness, and I really want to highlight, this work may not look this way, but I really want the material to be highlighted again with the subdued color, traditional subject matter, but the mark making and surface and the way that it just sits there and doesn't sort of pull back into the surface is something that helps me this. I'm also making paintings on aluminum, I'm making paintings on wood, so but right now this is what's keeping me. I'm going with it. I'm going to give this to Nick now because he can't wait.
I was gonna say, it's a very material. Okay, I'm gonna leave it into this. Matt's work, to me at least, is very ethereal. It has that component of, like you said, I don't know what exact word you said, but it has this subtlety and softness to it. And Nick's work, great that you're sitting next to each other here, also has that, but they're these bright, defined colors. And so Nick, maybe you can explain your process, because people don't necessarily know what they're looking at here, you know, it's not readily obvious, which is awesome. And like, what made you decide to focus in on this type of thing?
Okay, I think, you know, the first thing that I want to say is that these works don't really feel like a lot of my other work, so some of the things I'm going to say maybe don't apply to what's on the wall, but I'll do my best to stick with what's on the wall.
You can talk more broadly.
Sure, but first I'll just describe the process. So I'm primarily a photographer, but my subject matter tends to be everyday objects. Like I photograph things like rubber bands and plastic straws and Post-it notes and things like that. You know, much like what Noel was saying, I make like, I kind of am interested in like making like an abstract painting without being a painter, with using a lens generally. These do not involve a lens, so I'll describe a little bit about what these are. I find a lot of inspiration from kind of just like the materials around me, as I was saying, with everyday materials. This is made from photo materials. I have a large format printer for making photographic prints, and with it comes a lot of wasted ink. It tells you the printer's out of ink. You open up the cartridge, there's a ton of ink still in it. I don't love throwing that away, so what I did was I took them out of the cartridge and I used an airbrush to make these kind of paintings, or these works.
His work is behind him, just so I can
These
and
things,
over there.
and there's one over there as well. But also, what I was kind of thinking about was, you know, my photographs these days, when they are printed, they're almost always inkjet. I mean, there's still darkroom processes and things like that, but most photographic prints are ink on paper coming out of these printers. They're made up of lots of tiny little dots of ink. So I was kind of thinking about how to kind of replicate that in my process. That's where the airbrush came from. But I also was adding these gradients that I actually printed with that printer. So I start with like 1 or 2 gradients that I make in Photoshop and hit print, and then I add some by hand with the airbrush. And so to me, they're related to photography because they're tiny little dots of ink on a piece of paper, and it's a photographic paper. It's photographed in ink for, you know,
Right.
Photographs are made, but they're obviously not photographs. They're not lens based. They're not of anything. They're abstract.
Mhm.
But that's kind of what I'm interested in too, is this photographic kind of push and pull, like how abstract can you get with a photograph? Photograph is always a picture. It's of something. You know, you can take a picture of light, and it can look abstract, but it's really just it's a picture of something. It's a picture of light on the wall or whatever. Just saying that because I'm seeing light on the wall. So that's how I got there. But so my practice is kind of broadly interested in these things where I'm looking at kind of how to push the materials and the qualities of photography to kind of their extremes, or to ways that you don't normally see.
Yeah, but that's what's always been super interesting, at least to me, about your work, is that, like you just said, photography is usually very literal, right? How can you capture a moment or a scene or whatever? And you're not interested really in that at all. You're interested in like pushing the boundaries or exploring, I don't even know if it's pushing the boundaries, but exploring other avenues of photography and what constitutes a photograph.
Right.
Do you think of these as photographs?
I mean, that's sort of the conceit, but I mean, I don't really, they're not. I mean, but I was thinking of them in that way insofar as just like the makeup of them is the same thing as the makeup of one of my photographs. It's just ink on this paper in tiny little dots.
Yeah.
So, in that sense, yes. In another sense, not at all. So, I probably made, I'd say like 40 of these total, and these were made a long time ago. They were made in 2017, I think.
Yeah.
And I never really did anything with them. So
room in the show.
No, I mean, it was a great opportunity to show something that I had made and really enjoyed making and didn't really ever do
Yeah.
much with.
Yeah,
Um,
really beautiful.
So,
Thank you. Margaret. Okay, I know the answer a little bit.
Will you talk for me, please?
No. I think you're looking the right way. No, just tell us about like, I mean, how, I'm gonna just phrase it a little different. How do you define yourself as an artist? And how do you choose your materials and why? You're getting a curveball, sorry.
No. Like Nick and Noel and others, I wanted to make abstract paintings, but I felt like I had to find a different way of going about it than my original thoughts about abstract painting. What inspired me when I was young and I was thinking that I wanted to be an artist, I imagined myself making abstract paintings because I looked at like the woman abstract painter as kind of this character who was like free and happy, and it was kind of like a trope of my childhood and like movies and, you know, all over this woman like splashing paint around and just making these wild gestures, and you know, and I thought, you know, she's so cool, like she's, you know, something that I wasn't, you know, I was very unfree and very unhappy. So I thought if I could just get like a bucket of paint and some canvas somewhere. So then I started a school at UIC, which is an amazing conceptual art program, really. And I started trying to like do the, you know, going inside my subconscious, which is kind of like what the abstraction, you know, the traditional way of approaching it. And I just kind of hit a brick wall because I was like, well, there's nothing in here, you know. I'm not finding anything at all. And it just, instead of being this free person, I just felt really fake and like I was imitating that character. And nothing good was coming out of it at all.
I disagree with them.
And so I kind of went and started doing conceptual art and using all different kinds of media, which was wonderful. And when I just came back to having this like urge to paint, like abstract painting again. And so this time I tried to look at other ways of going about it. And so I looked at like solid wit, where it's like using a formula of, you know, direct set of directions. So how the composition turns out is based on that. Looking at like painters like Julia Fish, who was my advisor, and her husband's here, Richard, who's an amazing painter that does geometric abstract paintings based on, you know, tile work and architectural things and the environment. You know, Frank Stella with his formulaic things based on shaped canvases, and then I came up with my own like love of like materials from the domestic environment, which is just, you know, my childhood I didn't have any like fine art or anything. It was, my mom was really into decorating, and I played with a lot of wallpaper, and that was, you know, there was no like kind of fine art in my background. So I kind of returned to those materials and put it all together, and this is what you get. So basically I found these, I was doing a lot of work with paper bags where I was just cutting them out and flattening them and using those shapes as kind of like ideal forms. And then this paper is from Home Depot. They sell these drop cloths that you put on the floor when you're painting the wall. They're like 12 foot by 9 foot. And when you take them out of the package, they're just super funky. I don't know how they're made, but they have these creases and folds, and they don't come out like
moisture of the paint, like they just never leave. I don't know where they come from. And that is, it's all made using the mistake paint from Home Depot. So I cruise around the home centers and just look for colors, and there's some degree of randomness where I bring them home and give them a shot, even if like they appear like really weird and awful in the store. Just to see what, because I'm not mixing my own colors. That's my like kind of way of bringing a surprise element into the process for myself, where I just don't know what's going to happen when I lay the paint down on the substrate. And then this is my first stretched piece on muslin, where I realized I actually bought the muslin from Amazon because I was gonna stretch it and then glue some of the paperwork down onto the muslin. So I thought it doesn't have to be like Belgian linen or anything, I'm just gluing. And I realized that the muslin had the same like weird creases and folds and imperfections. And that's how this one came. So it's a combination of rules and then intuition kind of taking over in terms of the color choices, and then which forms I choose. I feel like they're kind of like different roads that you can travel, and some get blown over and some get utilized, and some, just kind of end out of nowhere and you don't know what to do.
Right.
That's kind of the process that, it's like more of a process of discovery than of trying to create some kind of form, like I said, that's coming from your soul. It's just one step in front of the other. So,
Well, I think that you actually just hit on an interesting point where some artists are in many different ways, but like, you have a plan, but you can have the reverse of that plan, which is you discover what's actually happening. And so you actually just took my word, which is my next question. I'm gonna mix it up so you don't have to reverse. I don't know how we're doing on timing, so please let me know.
We're 30 minutes in.
Oh, okay. So I was thinking about rules. If each of you have rules that you apply to your practice, and how that relates to fun, and where that happens in your practice. Because we rarely talk about that when we're talking about with these artist panels, and it's all very serious. But like, really, art is beautiful, art is fun, it should be evocative, right? So I'm gonna talk bARBER. Do you have rules, and where do you find the fun in what you're doing?
Actually, that's really good. Because
Just make it up.
I have a ton of rules in painting, actually. And I had to have them so I can focus. And I recently, now that I've kind of mastered what I was, attempting, or reached it, I started breaking up now. But the rules were in play to give me freedom, to make it easier to approach the conversation I'm trying to have, because my brain is like kind of taking everything and want to articulate and express everything, but I had to put parameters so I can like say something direct and say something succinct. And because I had those rules and I stuck to them, I was free in the studio, and that became fun.
Yeah.
And I was able to then start to filter other inspirations through these rules. So like, I started doing landscape painting through these rules. I started to, try to get more specific with the, not just capture people's movement and how they sit, but actually try to apply those rules to their personality. So it created space. I think is, I'm gonna ruin this quote, but he says something about discipline is for the free, or something like that. but he's a runner. He was a guy. Euclid. Chinko?
Ooh, I don't know that.
But he's a Kenyan runner. He was the first guy to run a marathon in under 2 hours.
Oh, that I know what you're talking about. What's
Say
his
it again,
name?
Bobby?
Oh,
Okay, yeah, that guy. What do you know his quote about discipline? There's freedom in discipline, or something like that. But he gives this whole talk about it. That's really great. But anyway, I think that's how rules come into play with my work.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I don't know how to see.
I thought Nick was in the hot seat.
Nick can go first.
I will actually, I think about rules in the macro, in the micro, and the macro, studying the history of especially Western art over the last 150 years. It's all about figuring out what the rules are and then breaking them, and then figuring out which ones you're gonna break, why and how is where some fun can come in. In the micro, I feel like when I'm making my paintings, once I figure out what the rules are, I wanna complicate them, and that's where the fun comes in. That I feel like I do set up rules for myself, and then I sort of figure out how to play on that field with those rules, and then I try and find ways to make it more dynamic, and that's where all the fun is.
We were coming back here, I'm mixing. Breaking the rules.
I have a lot of rules that I follow. I come from like slightly of a woodworking background in my early college days, and wood, there's no give. Like you can't, if you mess up a cut, like it mess everything up. So I still treat everything I make in that same regard. Where I watch tailors and people like on the internet cutting and just like being free with how they cut their patterns. I'm like, I don't understand how you do that, because I have to be exactly like on the line, like perfect square, like every one of those squares is exactly the same. And they have to, every corner needs to meet perfectly in the middle, and that's where it's not fun. So,
Precision is not
yeah,
fun.
it's just like very repetitive. The fun is just honestly being done. Yeah, like thank God this is over. Like, I'm happy with it. Because a lot of my stuff is very precision based and then repetition, and like I have to do it again and again and again and again. But then kind of going off of what Barbara was saying of making these rules through like, I like parameters. I like giving myself like, okay, this is the format, this is like what I'm gonna follow, this is what I do enjoy doing and having fun with it and consistency. And, I was very stern on types of textiles I use. I like using heavy canvas and very durable things that I feel like I like enjoy sewing. My sewing machine has to be set in a certain specific way. Like everything needs to be very consistent throughout to get a consistent outcome. But as of lately, I've been feeling like I've gotten good enough at all the things that I'm used to making, where I'm not getting bored with it. I'm just getting like, okay, I wonder how it would be if I mixed it up a little bit, like throw in like start challenging myself again after I done these a million times, and now I'm like, okay, like right now I'm in the studio just experimenting, and that is the fun. That's where I'm having a lot of fun, where I'm just like, because I'm so rigid with how I make things, I have to go back to like freshman in college mindset of like, I didn't know anything and I was just approaching it however I wanted, and that's how I made like some of my most fun work. And then like getting the idea of galleries and viewers and like just getting like all that out of your head is very hard. So when I'm able to return to this like 18, 19-year-old mindset of like, just do whatever you want, and if it's bad, like whatever, my materials, it's a low cost, like broomsticks and like fabric I find like at the thrift store. So if I ruin it, like it's fine, but I try to get it right the first time. But that's where the fun is. It's the experiment after you already feel like you are comfortable. It's something that you feel that you have been successful at.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. All right, Nick. Sorry, Margaret, you want to say it?
So, rules, yeah, so for these, the rules that I gave myself was that I was only going to use the colors, like basically basically straight out of the tube kind of colors. So it's cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. And I was trying to, you know, mix them through the process of layering them, but it wasn't, so the rule was I wasn't gonna mix the inks together ahead of time and spray that, and also with the printer, just set it at pure magenta, pure cyan, pure yellow. I don't know if they print with just that ink or not. There's no way of me kind of figuring that out, but I'm trying to get it to do that. So that is kind of a rule that I came up with for that, and that, you know, that references like printing processes in general, you know, with those colors, CMYK. Then more broadly, I think for other work that I made, that's the photographic with the camera and the lens and the objects, the rules that I kind of have broadly for that, which, you know, are sometimes broken, is I'm looking for objects to photograph that are just shapes and colors. I want to make it as stripped down and simple as possible. So like, as I mentioned, I use Post-it notes, which are just squares, and you can get them in different colors. You know, rubber bands, you can get them in different colors. I played with some, but mostly, you know, they're one color. They're circles and ovals and, you know, imperfect, but they're still just shapes. Straws, they're basically straight lines. So I mostly am looking for objects that are really just, like I said, shapes and colors. Just so, I mean, you can identify them, but I don't want them to be too much about what the object is. It's more about its formal qualities for me. And, you know, and then it becomes fun because you can really just play with just like the pure color and shape kind of, you know, it's just, you know, you get to really focus in on just what it looks like and kind of how you can kind of arrange them in a way that feels, I don't know, just beautiful.
Beautiful. I was gonna say, no changes.
I mean, I think, you know, my work, I aim for beauty, which is a kind of, you know, not very postmodern thing to say, but
it's important.
But yeah, I like making things that are beautiful, and, you know, I like having ideas too, but I'm looking for beauty in my photographs, so.
I like that. I love that.
And
Did not know that.
because we both share that, I just like to continue that thought.
Yeah.
When you start looking at the world like for shapes and colors and simple things, everything kind of starts becoming magical that you look at. And that's the whole kind of, if there's like a social or political message to using the everyday materials, it's that everybody has access to these materials. This is stuff in your desk, this is stuff that's in your basement, and once you start looking at the world like this, you know, that idea of anybody being able to be an artist becomes more and more true. So I mean, I think that's the fun of, you know, having a rule like only using everyday found materials, like I have, and you have, is that you start, things in the real world start transforming for your eyes, and so just looking around it, everything becomes, you know, more mysterious and fun.
Yeah, and isn't that what art is supposed to be in part, you know? And that's why I wanted to ask that question, just maybe fun or joy or whatever it is. I mean, it should be a part of, you know, what you guys are creating, what we are experiencing when you create it, and I think that just gets, I'm just kind of focusing on that because it gets lost a lot of time in the transaction or in the whatever, exhibition, whatever it is. And so for me and James bringing the five of you together, which is not really like the most obvious thing, the show came together really like organically, which is a buzzword, but it really did. And your works all relate and reflect, I think, each other. I don't know if you feel that way, but as a curator or whatever, I look around and I see that, and it was like super exciting for James and I to like have that happen. So I hope that you guys like, you know, feel that way as well, and you don't have to. But there was like some joy in that, at least for me, not that it's fun.
Well, after hearing it, I definitely see it at first in the opening. I just enjoy seeing everyone's work and then seeing like how it was made and everything. And then, but after hearing everybody talk, we all are like shaking our heads, nodding, and like we know the feeling of whatever it is we're all talking about, of like defining the paper and then like discovering the crinkles and the wrinkles, and then like I like the like your canvas, like the Japanese paper, the Yubo, like that's like amazing. Now I want to try it. Just like hearing about how we all connect to our materials very closely. I mean, especially us, like we're very like, you're definitely collage based. I like in the collage realm, it's fun to hear how you found that, discovered that through knowing all of us. So like I see it.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Start over.
Yeah,
Let's
Start
start
over,
over.
say that again. Well, I wanted to make sure, I didn't, if you're, I want to make sure we have time for questions, because we have 5 wonderful artists up here, and you guys have all taken the time to come out, so if anyone has any questions, please let us know.
So it's piggybacking off of what you were just saying, because when I came to the opening, I too was like, oh, these are interesting altogether, but sitting here, you see how well curated it is, first of all, and also how the layers and the depth, and even a lot of the coloration, and you enter each of them in this, even if they're not legitimately collage, like we were talking about your piece, you feel like you enter into the foot, like all of them have this like entry into it, layer, and so it is really incredible how they all correspond and relate to each other. It's really amazing.
Thank you. Thank you.
So Jeff, there's a question for you curatorially. So all of work, with the exception of chairs, I guess, is two-dimensional. And for you and James, it was just moving, the decision was made to sort of focus on two-dimensional.
On two-dimensional work?
Can you repeat the question? She's wondering, do you want to?
How we came to focusing mostly on two-dimensional work. You know, I would say it wasn't actually a conscious thing if we have to have two-dimensional work. It wasn't at all. We actually did rounds of studio visits. We asked artists what they would like to contribute, and under the context of like studio sessions, like how they would like to show their work and what was like sort of in process, and it came out that way. So it wasn't, which I actually think also like taking into account the space. I liked the volume personally of the space being empty in the middle and having to circle around it, which I thought really highlighted the work and forced you just to kind of move in the space and not have anything obstructing that. But I actually thought about putting those chairs.
I like what you did. I think it's great.
But, oh, thank you. Yeah, but it wasn't a conscious thing. We would have taken, right, James, you can speak to this. You can come up here if you want.
No, I think I'm just giddy. I mean, like hearing, I knew you all fit together. I don't think I necessarily knew why. I think under the auspice of studio sessions, it made the most sense. I think Jennifer and I, what I really connected to with Jennifer was her belief in the artist. And her belief in the artist really fanned the flames of my idea of what an artist is, which is like someone who pursues an impulse, someone who's the real deal, somebody that's doing the work in the studio, and between us, we're like, who has studio practices we admire? And I don't think we were thinking about it materially in any way. It was very much about approach, and I think, yes, these are sculptures, but Matthew also makes his frames. And Noel did the stitching, and Margaret is all about whether it's on muslin or if it's on paper, and it's all this material exploration, whether or not it lands sculpturally or it lands two-dimensionally with this quintet. I think it really, like, hearing you guys just kind of talk and amplify that voice of like, I kind of wrote down buzzwords for each of you. It was like Noel, speed, bARBER, resourcefulness, Matthew, explore, Nick, push, Margaret, this freedom. Like all of these words talk to the artist's natural desire to just fan that impulse of what fires them. And I think I admire that about you guys. I think the show really expresses that so well. I'm so proud of all of you. I'm so excited I was a part of it. So yeah, I think as far as curating, it was something that Jennifer said, it like fell into place. It was just kind of like plinko. Like, and we were done, and it was on the wall, and we were happy, and like, we could arrange this in any iteration, and I think all of the artists' work, even with Nick, I think you have the oldest work in here, but it was you emailing and being like, this is my newest work, and connecting to that new work and that drive, and being like, oh my god, like, what is he doing? And then looking back at the older work and being like, this is there, like, being able to connect those dots for you guys is like such a treat.
Yeah.
So.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, curating was the easy part. I think it was just like listening to the artist.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. Hi.
I love hearing you guys talk about rules, because I think rules exist because of the potential to stray away from some kind of structure. So I'm curious what role failure plays in your process. Is it structure, or is it something that kind of derails you, or is it like a structure that enables you to be derailed? That's a good one.
In the studio, I give up really quickly. Like, I don't give up quickly, but if I'm like halfway through an experiment, I'm like, this is taking forever, and like I'm not even having fun, and it's not looking how I want it to look or how I saw it in my head. I don't know if it's worth my time to like keep pursuing this idea. Like, do I love it that much? If it's something that I really love, I'll get someone who can actually cut the wood for me and like really map it out like that way, where I'm not just like slapping it together in the studio. So I mean, it's just like a time thing, like, because I feel like everything I do, like I'm always constantly thinking about efficiency, because everything I do is so, it takes forever to make. So I'm like, okay, I need to like figure out a better way to do like just like efficiency with these. Like, you would think I would layer these squares on top of each other and cut them like in layers of 4, but I don't, because then it like messes up the shifts like as you cut and stuff like that. So I don't like doing that, so everything takes as long as it looks. So yeah, like today I was messing around with like today I was messing around with cutting like a mop handle. I was like, I don't know, like it's just taking forever, and like I don't know if I like how it's like really looking. And then I had some outsider perspective with the studio visit. Like, oh, this is great. I'm like, okay, maybe I do like it.
That's good evidence.
Yeah, like being in the studio alone is like all the time. Like, you can get in your own head, or you're just like staring at it forever and ever and ever. And then I'm me, at least I'm like, that sucks. Like, I don't like it. And then I come back, I'm like, oh, it's actually not that bad. Like, I can see why I made it. So I don't know. It's a balancing act with quote unquote. I always learn something at least. That's the thing.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. That I recently been like the last 2 years, maybe 2.5. That well, I can give myself a little bit more credit. When I was a teacher, I had this rule, and I taught about this. I made up this rule in pre-K, so I taught K through 2nd at the time. And I used to tell my class to say, repeat after me, say, no mistakes. You guys say no mistakes. No mistakes. Make it work. Make it work. So, because all my students would want to, as soon as they put a mark down, they flip the pencil over and trying to erase it. And they can never get to the end of the piece. So I say, no mistakes, you make that work. And so I used to clip all the erasers off the pencils. Because the work, you're having a conversation with the piece, and and that is where you grow, and that's how you build. And so that's how I look at mistakes now, and I think I use that word information. It's not a mistake, it's just information. And And at that moment, it just doesn't make sense. So that means that if I am like paying attention to that information that just doesn't make sense and I can't make a move, I step back, sleep, go for a walk, go for a run, and honestly, like 99 percent, I come back and I'm like, oh. And even then, there's some, well, part of my rules was that, like, so whenever I start a painting, the first 3 are like wild, you know, I'm like, why did I make that mark? And I don't judge myself for it because I'm just trying to get after it. But I leave it there. I would choose a random, you know, magenta or something like that, and it stays there to the end of painting. I never cover it up. I just work around it. And so I just see it as the short answer is it's just all information, and we're going in one direction, and eventually it's gonna make sense. And I trust that process because when it actually does make sense, a week later, 2 days later, 3 hours later, it's like it builds trust in myself. And that is the point of my practice, to trust myself, to trust what I'm doing, to trust my direction. So I love when I come across something that doesn't make sense at the moment, because that's just life. Life doesn't always make sense. You just gotta keep going.
Okay, now I'm on the spot. No, it's okay. Yeah, I mean, I think the thing about photography is that you keep taking pictures, especially now in the age of digital photography.
Yeah.
So for me, if I make something, you know, I don't print everything I make. Some things just live as digital files, and I'm not sure if they're failures or not because I haven't created them, I haven't put them, you know, I haven't made them into the final project, or the final piece, by figuring out the scale, doing all the editing that I would want to do, things like that. And there, you can just do so many different iterations and then figure out later which is the right one. So that's kind of how I work. And then, like, you know, what happens is I don't really, like, if I look at something and I'm like, this isn't working, then I just stop. And I try something a little bit different. But I save the file and like, you know, I look back at things that I've done. You know, recently I looked through kind of my files from, you know, the last, I don't know, since I was in grad school in 2010 is when I started, so it's been a while. And you know, I looked through, like, not everything I ever did, but I looked through a lot of it and kind of came back to things that I had forgotten I had done, and because I didn't at the time didn't think it really worked, and I was like, oh, like with a new set of eyes,
Right.
I think this could be something. Maybe it's pointing me towards something if it isn't necessarily itself something. So
That's potential.
yeah, I mean, I think I don't really think of things that I've done that didn't really turn into anything as failures necessarily. They're just kind of a stop on the road that I can reference back to later if I want to. So.
Bring it home.
Right.
Well, for me, rules are rules. Like, I don't break my rules. I believe in breaking other people's rules. And if there's part of the joy for me is when I think of some direction or find a material that I can use, but it still follows the rules. So like when I can find, so I made this one series of eggs, where I broke the eggs, took out the yolk, and then I refilled the egg with paint. So that it was the exact same weight as the egg. And then I used paint to reclose the egg and fill the cracks in. So it's like, it's based on a Japanese art called kintsugi, where if you break a vase or something that's special to you, you repair it with gold paint. So I used my house paint to repair these eggs. And when I thought of that idea, I was like really excited because I'm like, and I'm following the lines, you know? So that's my prime directive. I've got 5 rules, but the most important one is follow the lines. That's how everything, all the compositions are generated. So it's like, and I can follow the lines, you know? It's like, that's just that's the fun for me, is finding something new within my rules, like not breaking them per se.
Yeah.
But, yeah, so, yeah.
That's good.
That's
Uh-oh,
it.
now,
The end.
oh, he wants it back now.
Well, I will respond, but I also just want to thank Jennifer, James.
Yes.
Regarding failure, I've learned the value of serendipity, and if anybody doesn't know the history of that word, it's got the most amazing etymology, and finding things that you're not looking for, and keeping your eyes open to their possibility, which is often the challenge. That becomes part of the fun, part of the inspiration, and a real challenge to do. But failures happen all the time if you're looking for this, but if you keep your mind open to that, it often allows for a lot more. So thanks.
All right. Well, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.